So I'm gonna pose this question to both of you. I'd love to hear like your definitions of it, or your positions on it. How do you define leadership, and what qualifies somebody to lead?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think in terms of leadership, ultimately you want every individual person to lead him or herself, but it's sort of a path toward that. So how do you have a person who's a leader, but in a provisional sense, that like you're moving through that person, they just sort of guide you as far as you can come without being on your own. So I don't know. I think my definition of leadership is much more contingent on growth.
Right, because they say that basically a good leader ultimately puts themselves out of a job.
Right, right.
So, I definitely agree with that. D, how would you?
When it comes to leadership, like I always have to envision a goal. So there needs to be a goal at hand in order to first have a leader. That leader will sort of guide you or coach you towards that goal, and they'll kind of go along with you the way. I'm trying to word that better. They'll travel with you. They'll work towards that goal with you and help you reach that goal. So I think leadership, to define that, would be more so like, hey, I'm here to serve and help take you to the goal that's at hand. So maybe being able to serve is a better definition of leadership. It's hand in hand.
Definitely. One of the best quotes on leadership, really on kingship, that I've ever heard is from a very, very old document called the Instructions for Medicare, the old kings of Kemet of Egypt. And as he was being advised, he was told that great is the man whose great men are great. So essentially, part of being a qualified leader is the kind of counsel that you keep. So even the fact that there were those rites of passage where the priest would take the upcoming king and instruct him on what that even means, and basically teach him to surround himself with equal types of beings, because a lot of times leaders, some people want to be leaders in such a way that they constantly need people to be needing them. But strong leaders also are surrounded by strength and different types of strength, so that they can augment their own abilities through the brotherhood that they share with other leaders. So everybody, like you said, within their own pockets. Ultimately, you want everybody to be a leader within their own space, within their own kingdom, how they move through the world. A big part of that is by surrounding yourself with the right types of people.
I think there's also an element of instruction in leadership. Like, I mean, you said leadership, and I immediately thought of a teacher. And like a teacher also has that provisional quality that you were mentioning, like toward a goal. Like I'm thinking of like, for example, in Hebrew, the word for parents, teacher, and instruction are all the same root. So like your teacher is your moreh, and then your parents are your holim, and then the Bible is the Torah. So they all come from the same root. So it's like your leaders, your parents are your leaders, your teachers are the leaders. They should be teaching you something. If they're not teaching you something, then they're kind of not qualified to be a leader. In a sense,
Definitely. Right? Yeah, it sounds a lot like even within the Bantu culture, in the process of ancestralization, there's actually an auditing of your life that takes place, which is why funerary rites are so important in traditional African culture. Whether it's the writings on the walls in Egypt of what you did literally, or certain ceremonies wherein literally people gather together and find out if you owed anybody money in life, or if anybody owed you, and try to balance those scales to really look at what type of person you are, because being dead does not make you an ancestor. You have to have lived a life worthy of remembrance. And should you fail to do so, oftentimes your name is no longer uttered once your body has been removed from the space, because calling a name causes energy to regenerate itself, which is why you have names like in Yoruba, Babatunde, of course, which is the father has come again, the father has returned. So by using certain names and you keep those ancestral spirits alive. But should you not be worthy of that,
no one's gonna recite your name.
So there's also an element of leadership that is about knowing your historical context. Yeah, knowing the context in which you live and building on what has come before and taking it into account in how you build forward while still being innovative at the same time.
I like what you were saying, what just popped into my mind. There's like a level of passing the torch when it comes to leadership. So you need to leave a legacy to prove that you're a good leader. Otherwise, your job here on earth is over. What have you accomplished?
Yeah. And then in terms of qualifications, because we're sitting here with a doctor, with a college grad, and with a college dropout. So it's like,
and you're the smartest of the three of us.
But whether it's academic credentials or even sometimes high popularity, especially living in the age of social media, being an influencer and having a large following, in many cases creates situations where some people feel qualified to speak on certain things or be able to influence large droves of people to believe things that could be completely absurd. But the other thing that has happened, like recently, this whole situation with LeBron James as an athlete and him being castigated, like the shut up and dribble comment is I'm speechless. It's hard for me to even imagine how that was even allowed to air. But I guess that's a strong message. And one thing I take from it is that one of the things we have to face is, or realize that we face, especially as Africans or in the diaspora or in the continent, that no matter how wealthy you are, what position you're in the society, you can get completely torn down within the space of basically white supremacy or whatever the mainstream is. When you speak on certain things that certain people don't like you can really have your power ripped away from you because it's the same system that gave it to you. And of course you look at a lot of others. Who's that professor that
Henry Louis Gates?
Yeah, Henry Louis Gates. The whole situation happened with him.
Right.
It's something else. So it seems like whether it's wealth or credentials, things like that, it doesn't really make a whole lot of difference.
Right.
In certain spaces,
Right.
Mm.
Yeah, I was thinking about the flip side of leadership because you were talking about Fox News, and there's also this element of people who just want to be led like sheep, and there's no sort of critical thinking about the leader. Fox News has essentially become state television these days, and just supporting a certain Trumpian doctrine, let's say.
Right.
But there are people who just need to be led, who want to be led, and what do you do about that? People who sort of want to enslave themselves to a leader and choose that.
Right. There's also a way of kind of hiding behind. This is why I appreciate LeBron James for even sticking his neck out, although his opinion is a relatively popular opinion of the Trump administration. Being able to, for him being able to speak, I think is important, especially in the position that he's in. But it really, it's such a slippery slope because then you have other athletes that are pushing flat Earth theory and pushing against other things that are just what? So it is a slippery slope, and again with social media and different things, and you can even have, when you talk about the Trump sort of ideology, you also have a shadow side to that, which is so liberal, I guess you could use in politic speak, whatever, that sometimes they also can't see the humanity in the other side.
Right.
And there's no middle ground, there's no room for conversation, and I think that sometimes what the best leaders do is they're able to unify opposites around what you were saying, the common goals are. What is the goal ultimately? Because when you're busy fighting and clashing against whatever you think the boogeyman is, you can lose sight of the higher objective.
Right.
Yeah. So sometimes I think, again, and like you say, within the groupthink dynamic, there isn't a lot of reflection taking place. There isn't a lot of internal auditing of what's happening within oneself and around oneself, which oftentimes are a mirror reflection of each other. When you can bring yourself into unison with your own contradictions, you begin to accept and be able to manage the contradictions around you.
I like that. Reminds me of I don't know, I think some people like the safety of just being told something because it's very safe, and reminds me of the etymology of guru, which is like light and dark, right? The guru, the teacher, is supposed to show you the light and the dark, but some people don't want to see the dark. They want to, I mean, they're in the dark because they think they're in the light. So there's this kind of like element where like they don't want to unify those scary parts of themselves and like to do the real work. They're just like complacent and like, all right, we have this leader, we're just gonna listen to him.
Yeah, the phrase that comes to mind is like the only way out is through.
Nice.
You know, and that whole it is a very anxiety ridden experience when you come face to face with certain realities that are anywhere from just terrifying to just outright depressing. And there's enough in the world, especially with the, I don't know about you, it seems like we're about to even digress off of the original topic. I guess I'm leading the topic off the path, but
It's all good.
I find that there's this uptick, especially amongst our generation. A lot of the statistics and stuff are showing that depression and anxiety and these things have basically spiked over the course of the past 20 years or so. And some people would argue that that might just be that it's getting diagnosed more often, or that there is this massive shift that's taking place. And I would say it's probably a little bit of both. But it's almost like people are being thrust into the role of having to be a leader of some kind, especially in the social media realm, or just the way that the social climate is now. Whether it's people using degrees or using, I've toured the world, I've got this Grammy, I've got this, that, to try to hold that up as a shield against, whatever negative appraisal they might be able to get from somebody. So it's like we keep a certain distance from each other, that sense of community where people really check in with each other often, or I feel like there's more distance. I remember my parents' generation and having so many people I call auntie and uncle. It's not even funny. Everybody was auntie and uncle, this and that. And like you're saying, even within the Hebrew language, it's very similar, that there's some people I would literally call like, I call them Baba, or like mom. That's not my mom,
right?
So any teacher, any authority figure, you'd still look at them as a father or mother figure. Whereas now, some people are like, they'll even teach their kids, and don't let nobody talk to you until say,
right.
And like the words that Haile Selassie spoke in the essence of power is that there is no power without responsibility, and he who embraces the one cannot escape or evade the other. So it's like we in a sense have distanced ourselves from one another to not be accountable, but then our distancing from one another has also, that's what I think is at the root of the anxiety and depression uptick that we've seen. So it's a really strange dynamic we find ourselves living in.
So how do we remedy that?
Ultimately, I think it's coming to grips with that reality, because the illusion right now has become the truth for the most part. People are, everyone's life is like their own TV show, especially the advent of reality TV, and everybody wants to project a life that may or may not be authentic, either on the surface or internally consistent, because some people have actualized certain things, but it's not coming from a place of I'm doing this because this is my destiny and this is the way I see my life going, but it's really about avoiding negative judgment. And I think when we embrace ourselves on a spiritual level, that we see that this material existence is it's a drop in the bucket, and I think we'll be able to relate in a much more authentic way. And I think that's where great leadership will come from, because you can't effectively lead if you can't really be trusted. And I think the best leaders are leaders who you don't have to deify. Leaders, so you look at people like Malcolm, who came from the dregs. You come see people who have come from the dark side and seen that, and those are sometimes the most effective leaders.
Right.
And that's like a level of just being a servant in addition to it.
See, so I think it's a good reasoning for this week, for this session. Yeah. All right.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
Very fruitful.
yeah.